in full-face balaclava, grabs the reins, the king's guard shouts. The streets were clean, the air carried a light chill, and the sound of footsteps echoed softly against stone. People gathered early, some standing behind barriers, others finding spots where they could see clearly. Many had waited a long time for this moment. Some had traveled far, holding cameras and phones, excited to witness a ceremony they had only seen in pictures and videos. Among them stood a king's guard, tall and still, dressed in a bright uniform that symbolized duty and history. He had stood like this many times before. His posture was straight, his eyes focused forward and his expression calm. To many people, he looked almost like a statue, but inside he was fully aware of everything around him. He could hear the quiet murmur of the crowd, the click of cameras, and the distant sound of traffic beyond the square. He had been trained to notice small changes, even on peaceful days. The horse beneath him was strong and calm, its dark eyes steady. Years of careful training had taught the animal to remain composed in crowds, noise, and sudden movement. The horse shifted its weight slightly, breathing slowly, used to standing still for long periods. The guard trusted the horse, just as the horse trusted the guard. Their bond had grown through long hours of practice and discipline. Together, they represented control, patience, and tradition. Tourists whispered to one another, pointing gently but keeping their distance. Parents lifted children so they could see better. Some people smiled, others watched with serious faces, trying to understand the importance of what they were witnessing. A few laughed quietly, unaware that even small distractions could be noticed by the trained eyes of the guard. Still, everything remained peaceful. The guard remembered his training clearly. He had been taught that calm moments were just as important as tense ones. In fact, calm moments required more focus. When nothing seemed wrong, that was when attention mattered most. He had learned to control his breathing, to remain steady, and to keep his mind sharp even when standing still for a long time. Discipline was not only about action, it was about patience. The morning light reflected off polished metal and clean fabric. The uniform felt heavy but familiar. Every detail, from the way he held the reins to the angle of his shoulders, followed strict rules. These rules were not meant to impress the crowd but to maintain order and safety. The guard understood this deeply. His role was not just ceremonial, it carried responsibility. Nearby, other guards stood at their posts, equally focused. Though they did not speak, they were aware of one another. They had trained together, learned together, and trusted one another. A single glance could be enough to communicate awareness. This silent understanding gave them strength. The crowd slowly grew thicker as more people arrived. Some stood at the back, trying to see over others' heads. A few stepped closer than allowed, but security gently guided them back. The guard noticed these small movements but did not react. He knew the difference between curiosity and real concern. His face remained unchanged. Time passed slowly. The guard's legs felt the strain of stillness, but he ignored it. His mind stayed active, scanning faces and movements. He noticed a man adjusting his backpack, a child pulling at a parent's sleeve, a woman stepping aside to answer her phone. All of it blended into the normal rhythm of a public space. The horse flicked an ear, reacting to a distant sound. The guard felt it immediately and responded with a slight adjustment of the reins, calm and controlled. The horse relaxed again. This silent communication was something few people noticed, but it was constant. For many in the crowd, this was entertainment. For the guard, it was duty. He understood that even on the most peaceful days, situations could change without warning. That knowledge never left him. He did not feel fear, only readiness. A light breeze moved through the square, carrying the sound of footsteps and quiet voices. Flags shifted gently overhead. Everything appeared balanced, controlled, and calm. The scene looked perfect, almost unreal, like a moment frozen in time. The guard thought briefly of why he had chosen this path. It was not for attention or praise. It was for discipline, service, and respect for tradition. He had accepted that his role meant standing firm, even when uncomfortable, even when tested. That understanding shaped every moment of his duty. The horse shifted again, a natural movement, and the guard responded without thought. His hands remained steady. His breathing remained slow. His eyes remained alert. To the crowd, nothing had changed. To him, everything mattered. Some tourists smiled, satisfied with their photos, while others waited patiently, hoping to see something more. They did not realize that the lack of excitement was a sign that everything was working exactly as it should. Order often looks quiet. As the minutes passed, the guard remained unchanged. Calm did not mean relaxed, it meant controlled. The square continued to fill with people, but the atmosphere stayed respectful. There was no sign that the day would become anything other than another peaceful moment in a long line of similar days. Yet beneath the calm surface, the guard's training remained alive. His awareness never faded. He knew that calm could break in an instant. That was why he stood ready, silent, and focused, as the world watched, unaware that this quiet moment was only the beginning of a story no one expected. The calm that filled the square did not break suddenly. It changed quietly in a way that few noticed at first. People were still watching, still holding their phones, still whispering. The guard remained still and the horse stood steady. Everything looked normal from a distance. But small details began to shift, and those details mattered. Near the edge of the crowd, a man stood slightly apart from the others. He was dressed differently, covered from head to neck, his face hidden. At first, no one paid attention to him. In a place full of strangers, one unusual person did not seem important. People assumed he was cold or shy or simply trying to avoid attention. The guard noticed him but did not react. He had learned not to judge too quickly. The man's body language, however, was not relaxed. He shifted his weight again and again. His hands moved close to his sides, then forward, then back. He looked toward the horse, then away, then back again. His movements were small but uneasy. To an untrained eye, it meant nothing. To the guard, it was something to remember. The crowd pressed slightly forward as more people tried to get a better view. A few stepped closer than allowed, and security staff guided them back calmly. The man did not move back. Instead, he stayed where he was, watching closely. His breathing seemed fast. His shoulders were tense. The guard felt a change in the air, not a sound, not a movement, but a feeling. Experience had taught him to trust that feeling. He adjusted his focus, keeping his eyes forward while staying aware of the space around him. His hands rested firmly on the reins, relaxed but ready. Then it happened. The man stepped forward quickly. It was not a run, not a jump, but a sudden move that broke the invisible line between the crowd and the guard. Before anyone could react, his arm reached out. His hand closed around the reins of the horse. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow. A sharp sound came from the crowd, a mix of surprise and fear. Some people gasped. Others froze, unsure of what they were seeing. Phones shook as hands trembled. A few people stepped back, instinctively creating space. The horse reacted immediately. Its muscles tightened, sensing unfamiliar pressure. Its head lifted slightly, eyes alert. Years of training kept it from panicking, but the tension was clear. The guard felt the change through the saddle and the reins. His body responded before his thoughts could form words. He did not move wildly. He did not lose control. His training guided him. His grip tightened just enough to steady the horse. His posture remained strong. His voice was ready but not rushed. The man's grip on the reins was firm but not rough. He did not pull hard. He did not shout. That made the moment even more confusing. People expected anger or noise, but instead there was a strange silence filled with tension. The guard turned his head slightly, just enough to see clearly. His eyes met the scene in front of him. He could see the man's covered face, the tight hold on the reins, the way the man leaned forward. There was no sign of panic in the guard's face, only focus. The crowd held its breath. A child began to cry somewhere behind the barriers. A parent quickly tried to calm them. Someone whispered, asking what was happening. Others stood frozen, afraid to move. The guard understood that every second mattered. A strong reaction could make the situation worse. A weak reaction could invite danger. Balance was everything. The horse shifted its front legs, uncertain but controlled. The guard applied gentle pressure, signaling calm. The animal trusted him and did not try to move away. That trust was the result of countless hours of training. Nearby guards noticed the disturbance. Their heads turned slightly. Their focus sharpened. They did not rush forward yet, but they were ready. Security staff also began to move, slowly and carefully, not wanting to cause panic. The man still held the reins. His hand shook slightly now. Whatever had pushed him forward moments earlier seemed to fade, replaced by hesitation. He looked around, realizing that all eyes were on him. The guard finally spoke. His voice was firm and clear, carrying authority without anger. It cut through the noise and reached everyone nearby. The words were not rushed. They were controlled, practiced, and strong. That voice changed the moment. The man froze. His grip loosened just a little. The crowd reacted to the sound, stepping back further, creating more space. The horse relaxed slightly, responding to the calm strength of the guard's command. The guard did not insult the man. He did not threaten him. He focused on control and safety. His eyes never left the situation. His body remained steady, showing no fear. Security moved closer now, their steps measured. They positioned themselves carefully, ready to act but not to alarm. The nearby guards adjusted their stance, prepared to support if needed. The man slowly released one hand from the reins. His shoulders dropped. The tension in his body softened. It was clear that whatever had driven him forward had passed, replaced by uncertainty and awareness of consequences. The guard kept speaking calmly, guiding the moment toward a safe end. The horse stood quietly, breathing evenly once more. The connection between guard and horse remained unbroken. The crowd watched in silence. Many people later said they had never felt such tension without noise. It was a moment filled with unspoken emotion, where discipline and calm faced sudden disorder. Within seconds, security staff stepped fully between the man and the horse. They guided him away gently but firmly. There was no struggle. The man did not resist. The reins were free again. The guard returned his focus forward. His posture did not change. His face showed no emotion. To an outside viewer, it might have seemed as though nothing had happened. But those who witnessed it knew better. The square slowly exhaled. People whispered, shocked by how fast the moment had come and gone. Phones lowered. Parents held their children closer. Some people felt relief, others admiration. The guard remained still just as before, but inside he knew that the calm of earlier had been tested, and it had held. What had seemed like a peaceful day had revealed how quickly things could change. The moment was over, but its weight stayed in the air. The story was no longer just about ceremony. It had become about control, awareness, and the thin line between order and chaos. And as the crowd slowly returned to quiet observation, one truth became clear. This was no longer an ordinary day. The moment did not truly end when the man released the reins. In many ways, it was only changing shape. The crowd had stepped back, but their attention remained fixed on the guard. Every eye followed his movements, every ear waited for his next words. Silence settled again, heavier than before, filled with awareness rather than calm. The guard stayed exactly where he was. His hands rested firmly on the reins, steady and controlled. His shoulders remained square, his back straight. He did not rush to look around, and he did not show relief. His training reminded him that situations like this did not fully end until order was completely restored. Calm after tension still required focus. The horse beneath him was breathing evenly now. Its ears moved gently, listening to the environment. It trusted the guard completely. The sudden contact had surprised it, but the familiar signals from the guard had guided it back to calm. That silent trust between them became the strongest force in the square at that moment. The guard spoke again, his voice firm and clear, not raised in anger, not rushed by fear. The sound of his voice carried authority that came from discipline, not emotion. It was the kind of voice that made people listen without feeling threatened. The words were simple, direct, and focused on safety. The nearby guards adjusted their positions. They did not crowd the space, but they formed a quiet presence. Each one knew his role. No one spoke loudly. No one made sudden movements. This controlled response prevented panic from spreading. The crowd sensed this control and followed it without realizing they were doing so. Security staff guided the man farther away from the horse. Their hands were gentle but firm. The man did not resist. His head was lowered now, his movements slower. The confidence he had shown moments earlier had faded. The reality of the situation had reached him. He understood that his action, though brief, had crossed a serious line. The guard watched until the space in front of him was completely clear. Only then did he return his eyes forward. He did not turn his head to follow the man. His duty was not to judge or react emotionally. His duty was to maintain order and represent stability. The crowd slowly began to breathe again. Some people whispered to one another, trying to understand what they had just seen. Others stayed silent, still processing the moment. A few children asked quiet questions, confused by the sudden seriousness. Parents answered softly, choosing calm words. The guard's face remained unchanged. That was not because he felt nothing, but because he had been trained to separate feeling from action. Inside, his mind reviewed the moment carefully. He replayed every movement, every second. This reflection was automatic, part of his discipline. It helped him stay sharp. The horse shifted slightly, adjusting its stance. The guard responded with a gentle movement of the reins, almost invisible. The horse settled again. This simple exchange showed the depth of their connection. In a situation that could have become chaotic, they had remained in harmony. A quiet signal passed among the guards. It was not a gesture the crowd would notice, but it confirmed that the situation was under control. Security staff returned to their positions, keeping a careful eye on the crowd without drawing attention. The square slowly returned to its rhythm. Cameras were raised again, but with more respect. People stood a little farther back than before. The invisible line that had been crossed earlier now felt stronger. The crowd had learned something without being told. The guard remained still. Time passed, but his focus did not fade. He understood that moments after tension were important. People sometimes acted again when they believed danger had passed. His awareness stayed sharp. The air felt different now. It carried the memory of what had happened. The quiet was no longer just peaceful, it was thoughtful. People watched the guard with new understanding. They no longer saw only a ceremonial figure. They saw responsibility and control. The guard's voice had done more than stop an action. It had reminded everyone of boundaries. It had shown that authority did not need force to be effective. Calm strength was enough. Some members of the crowd later said that the guard's command was the most powerful sound they had ever heard in such a quiet place. It was not loud, but it was firm. It did not demand attention. It naturally took it. Minutes passed. The guard's legs felt the familiar strain of stillness, but he did not shift unnecessarily. Discipline meant endurance. The uniform felt heavy, but it was part of his identity. Each detail of his posture continued to reflect training and respect. The horse lowered its head slightly, relaxed again. The danger had passed and it sensed safety. The guard allowed himself a single steady breath, deep and controlled. No one noticed, but it helped reset his body and mind. The crowd continued to watch, but their expressions had changed. There was admiration now, mixed with relief. People realized how close the moment had come to something far worse, and how easily it had been guided back to calm. The guard did not think about praise or attention. His mind returned fully to duty. That was the rule he lived by. Moments passed and the square remained quiet and orderly. Somewhere in the distance, city sounds continued as usual. Traffic moved, voices echoed, life went on. But within the square, something important had been demonstrated. Order was not accidental. It was created and protected by discipline. The guard stayed at his post, unchanged on the outside, steady on the inside. The command he had given still seemed to hang in the air, a reminder of control and awareness. He knew that this moment would be remembered, not because of fear, but because of how it was handled. As time continued, the guard remained ready. He knew that duty did not end with one incident. It was continuous. Calm had returned, but readiness stayed. And while the crowd slowly returned to observation and quiet excitement, the guard stood firm, knowing that his voice, his posture, and his training had shaped the outcome of a moment that could have gone very differently. After the situation settled, the square slowly returned to movement, but it was not the same as before. People were still there, still watching, still holding cameras, yet their behavior had changed. There was more distance, more respect. The earlier excitement had turned into quiet awareness. Everyone now understood that what they were witnessing was not just a show, but a responsibility carried with care. The guard remained in position, exactly as trained. His posture stayed firm, his gaze steady. He did not relax just because the immediate issue was over. Experience had taught him that moments after tension could still be unpredictable. His focus stayed sharp, moving calmly from one detail to another without showing it outwardly. The horse beneath him had fully settled. Its breathing was slow and even. It shifted its weight slightly, a natural movement, and then stood still again. The guard felt every motion through the saddle. He responded with small, practiced adjustments that reassured the animal. Their connection remained strong, built on trust and routine. Security staff completed their task quietly. They guided the man away from the public area without drawing attention. There was no rush, no force, only clear direction. The man followed without resistance. His earlier urgency was gone. He looked smaller now, surrounded by authority and order. Soon, he was no longer visible to the crowd. Nearby guards returned to their exact positions. Each movement was precise, controlled, and familiar. No one spoke unnecessarily. The unity among them was clear. They did not need words to understand that their combined calm had helped prevent confusion. The crowd watched closely. Some people whispered about what had happened, trying to piece together the moment. Others stayed silent, still thinking. A few visitors lowered their phones, choosing to simply observe rather than record. The mood had shifted from curiosity to reflection. The guard noticed these changes without reacting. His role was not to manage the crowd's emotions, only their safety. He continued to stand still, representing stability. The uniform he wore was not just fabric, it was a symbol of order, and he treated it as such. Minutes passed. The tension that had filled the air earlier slowly faded. The square began to sound normal again. Footsteps, quiet voices, distant city noise, all returned gradually. Still, a sense of caution remained. People stayed within boundaries more carefully now. The guard felt the familiar ache in his muscles, but he ignored it. Endurance was part of his duty. He focused on his breathing, slow and controlled. His mind stayed present. Every sound, every movement remained registered. The horse turned an ear toward a distant noise and then relaxed again. The guard responded instinctively, maintaining calm contact. This constant communication was invisible to most people, but it was essential. It ensured that both remained steady in an environment full of unpredictable elements. A child in the crowd pointed toward the guard and whispered something to a parent. The parent nodded and gently explained. These small moments showed that the incident had become a lesson, even without words. The guard remained unchanged. He did not seek acknowledgement. His role required quiet strength, not recognition. The moment had passed, and his duty continued. Security officers took positions around the area, blending into the background. Their presence was subtle but reassuring. They watched carefully without making the space feel restricted. This balance helped restore a sense of normalcy. The square felt stable again. The invisible line between the public and the guard was clear and respected. People stood back naturally now, without being asked. Awareness had replaced curiosity. The guard's thoughts briefly returned to his training. He remembered long hours spent practicing control, patience, and calm responses. Moments like this were why that training mattered. Not every challenge arrived loudly. Some came quietly, without warning. He reminded himself to remain alert. One resolved moment did not guarantee a calm day. Readiness was constant. His eyes scanned gently, never fixing too long on one point. This steady awareness kept him prepared. The horse stood strong and still, its presence grounding the scene. Its calm reflected the guard's control. Together, they formed a picture of balance that the crowd now viewed with new respect. Time continued to pass. The sun shifted slightly, changing the shadows on the ground. The guard did not move. His duty existed outside of comfort or boredom. It was about consistency. People slowly returned to taking photos, but with more care. The earlier shock had reminded them that this space carried rules for a reason. The atmosphere became respectful again. The guard felt no pride, only responsibility. He knew that handling the situation calmly was simply part of his role. That understanding kept him steady. As the square returned fully to order, the guard remained a quiet center of control. What had happened would stay in the memories of those who witnessed it, but for him, it became part of experience, another moment that tested discipline and proved its value. The situation was resolved, not through force or chaos, but through calm authority and readiness. And as the day continued, the guard stood firm, knowing that control had not only protected safety, but had also shown the strength of discipline in its purest form. As the day slowly moved toward its end, the square settled into a familiar rhythm once again. People continued to come and go, unaware that only hours earlier the calm had been tested. To many new visitors, everything looked normal. The guard stood tall, the horse remained steady, and tradition continued without interruption. From the outside, it seemed like just another ordinary day. But for those who had witnessed the moment, the memory stayed alive. They spoke quietly among themselves, describing what they had seen. Some shared the story later with friends and family, not in excitement, but with respect. The incident had not turned into chaos, and that was what made it powerful. It showed how quickly order could be protected when discipline was strong. The guard remained at his post until his duty ended. He did not think of the moment as something dramatic or special. To him, it was simply a test of training. He understood that his responsibility did not begin or end with public attention. It existed whether anyone noticed or not. When the shift finally ended, the guard guided the horse away from the square. The path was quieter now. The noise of the crowd faded behind them, replaced by softer sounds. The horse walked calmly, responding to familiar signals. The guard felt a sense of balance, not relief but completion. The task had been carried out as it should have been. Later, away from the public eye, the guard reflected quietly. He did not replay the event with fear or pride. He thought about it with clarity. What mattered was that control had been maintained, safety preserved, and calm restored. That was success. The horse was cared for, brushed, and checked, just as always. The guard took time to ensure it was comfortable. Their connection was built on trust, and moments like the one they experienced only strengthened that bond. The horse had responded exactly as trained, and the guard respected that deeply. Elsewhere, the incident began to appear in conversations and online discussions. People shared short videos and descriptions. Many praised the calm response and professional behavior. Some expressed surprise at how quietly the situation had been handled. Others said the moment changed how they viewed ceremonial duty. It was no longer just a display, it was real responsibility. The story spread, but it did not grow exaggerated. The facts spoke for themselves. A sudden action had occurred and it had been met with calm control. No one was harmed. Order remained. That truth stayed at the center of every retelling. For the guard, life returned to routine. Training continued. Duties continued. There was no special treatment or attention. That was how it was meant to be. The role demanded consistency, not reward. Yet something subtle had changed. Experience always added weight to discipline. The guard carried that weight with quiet confidence. He knew he could trust his training, his instincts, and his ability to remain calm under pressure. That knowledge did not make him careless, it made him more focused. The square itself returned fully to normal. Visitors came for photos, children laughed, and the city moved forward. The moment became part of the place's history, unseen but present. Like many important lessons, it did not leave a mark you could touch, but it shaped behavior and awareness. Some who had witnessed the event remembered it as a lesson in boundaries. Others remembered it as an example of calm strength. Each person took something different from it, but all agreed on one thing. The response had mattered more than the action. The guard understood this without being told. He knew that authority did not come from force, but from control. He knew that silence could be more powerful than noise, and stillness stronger than movement. These truths guided his every action. As days passed, the incident faded from daily conversation, but its meaning remained. For the guard, it became another reminder of why discipline mattered. For the public, it became a quiet example of professionalism. Life continued as it always does. The guard stood at his post on many more days, facing crowds, noise, and unpredictability. Each time he carried the same calm presence. Each time he remained ready. The horse continued its training and duties, calm and steady. Together, guard and horse remained symbols of control, trust, and tradition. They did not seek attention, yet they earned respect. In the end, the story was not about a sudden action or a brief disturbance. It was about how order was protected without fear, how discipline spoke louder than emotion, and how calm strength guided a moment back to peace. And long after the crowd moved on and the square returned to silence, that lesson remained, quiet, steady, and strong, just like the guard who lived it.